everybody, it's the Lawn Gnome, and welcome once again to this very special mini-series that I'm doing here on my channel, which is the best and the worst of the last 10 years. It's crazy to believe that 10 years has passed us by, but it's also awesome when we take a look back and reflect on all of the things that we knew and loved, and maybe things that we still know and wish we didn't in the last 10 years. But today I'm really excited because we're going to be tackling a topic that there doesn't really seem to be many content creators that really go into this. There are a couple, and I do in fact support a great deal of them, but music is something I don't see as predominant here, especially when it comes to just talking about artists or reviewing albums, etc., etc. But I am really excited to talk about the best and worst of the last 10 years in music, especially because of the guest that will be joining me today, because she is a very great member of the BookTube community. She has done so many things above and beyond. She even created a meetup at BookCon 2019. So if you actually went to BookCon and actually did go to this meetup, you know exactly who is here. It's Cate from chaptercviii. Why is and she is here because she's also a musician. So I couldn't have asked for a more important person and a more fun person to join me on this little event. So Cate, thank you so much for taking the time, and welcome. This is your first time here on my channel.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm really excited because I really feel that I'm going to learn a lot today, because when it comes to people who actually are in the world of music, they are the biggest fans, but also they can be the biggest critics. And what I'm really excited for everybody who's going to be watching this today is going to learn possibly about a couple of bands or artists that you may not have even thought about. And I'm hoping that the two of us can bring a little bit of insight. So I, for one, really thought long and hard over the last 10 years about what are going to be my answers to all of these best and worst music categories. And I think I pinpointed them well. So before we begin, because I'm saying this in every one of these 4 videos, this is all opinion-based. Opinions are not facts, everybody. Please don't take anything seriously. We're just here to give our own personal thoughts and have a conversation based on said thoughts. You are more than welcome to reach out into the comments or reach out on a different video of mine, or if you're friends with Cate, feel free to talk to her about this as well. We do this also to create conversations, because that's what we should be doing. We should be talking to each other, communicating. That's what being part of a community is all about. So, Cate, are you ready to talk about some music?
I hope so.
We're also going to clarify a couple things. We're also going to be separating bands and artists, because I also feel that a solo artist and a band, we really should praise both, because there are 2 different kinds of music styles. While they may be in the same genre, like pop or rock or country, what have you, there still is a very distinct difference between just a solo recording artist and an actual band. And
absolutely.
And the sounds play a big role. So let's start off with solo artist. Cate, who do you think was the best artist of the last 10 years?
Okay, so just prefacing this, I like to take into account, of course, my own opinion, but also since my degree is in music therapy and that I use music so often at work, I have a kind of a weird perspective on a lot of music. But honestly, I kind of think that the best artist of this past decade is Rihanna, honestly, which I don't talk about Rihanna a lot, but Rihanna has managed to stay relevant for the whole decade somehow. Like, there hasn't been really a time in this past 10 years where I haven't heard something of hers on the radio, you know, where I've been able to go for a period of time listening to the radio without hearing her voice. And so that's why I kind of feel like she's one of the best artists, because she does put out music and she stays relevant, but she also isn't afraid to experiment with some different types of styles. And even when she's had some press that wasn't as positive with going through a difficult situation, she's managed to stay, she's managed to stay kind of relevant, I guess would be that's the only word I can really think of.
Well, you know that someone like Rihanna is relevant when a man like Tom Holland will dress up in women's clothing on a live stage and sing Umbrella. So yes, you're absolutely right. Rihanna is definitely one of the most relevant artists. I didn't pick her, but I definitely will agree with you as she definitely was one of them. But even
Hmm.
though I'm not someone who listens to this specific person's music, it would
Hmm.
be wrong not to classify this person as the best artist, in my opinion, of the last 10 years. It's Taylor Swift. I mean, Taylor Swift, you couldn't go anywhere, whether it was about the gossip or whether it was about the music. I mean, you had everything from Kanye West's incident to every single man that she dated to the fact that she's now like just brought out a new album and every one of the Swifties out there is just heads over heels for her new music. So to basically go and say Taylor Swift was not one of the best artists of the last 10 years would be sacrilege to anybody who respects music as an art. Would you agree?
You're absolutely right. And I, as someone who's not a Taylor Swift fan, I cannot, disregard the fact that she's made a pretty big impact. And I'm actually going to mention her later in this as well.
Yeah, and I mean, considering that she's one of the very few artists that can even go into different genres and be
Yeah.
extremely successful. I mean, to go from being a country star, which is a very big fandom in music. I mean, look, I know that the two of us discussed country music and our attitude towards it, but we can't deny the fact that there are so many fans of that music. And the fact that she was able to transition to pop and even a little bit of rock in some of her songs. I mean, look, I actually have one favorite Taylor Swift song. I like her song style. I just like it because it just has a good beat to it. And it sounds like something that, an artist like Madonna could have sang back in her day, or Debbie Gibson, or even someone like Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera. That just shows you how versatile she has been. And
You're absolutely right, honestly. You really are.
yeah,
And even as someone who doesn't really like Taylor Swift's music as much, I cannot get it out of my head half the time. I
yeah,
still get songs of hers stuck in my head, even if it's not like my go-to music. I did find that, an album that a lot of people didn't like was the Reputation. Is that the right one? Reputation? Is that what
I
it's
think
called?
so. I think
So
so. I
when
mean, again,
when
we're
that
not
one came
we're
out,
not
yeah,
fans, so we don't know the
we're
name.
not fans. Yeah, when that one came out, her publicity people like did a really good job. They wiped all of her social media, made it all completely blank. And then so everybody was like, well, what is going on? We know something's coming, we don't know what. But I really liked the style of that particular album, but a lot of people don't. But I think I liked it because it did have a little bit more hip hop sort of inspiration in some of the songs. And so
Yeah,
that's kind of what made me like it. But she does have a huge impact. And I think, being raised in the South, I live in South Carolina, and as a musician growing up, my mom was like, why don't you just try country music and then you can transition from there. And I'm like, because I don't want to be in country music. I can sing it pretty well, but it's not where I wanted to be. And I think that's a huge thing that she was able to kind of transition though.
I mean, the best part is she's even talked about and popular when she's not even saying anything. Remember how people were just so upset because of the fact that she wasn't showing her side in regards to politics? That just shows you that she has the staying power, even when it has to do with nothing about music at all. She's still talked about. That just
even
shows it.
even in silence, if you can be loud when you're quiet, that's power.
Exactly. So let's go to what you think might be the best band of the last 10 years.
So I have to, this band has been close to my heart for years, but I'm gonna have to go with Panic at the Disco.
Okay, well,
Another popular one.
yeah, I would definitely say, there have been a couple of artists that have been referred to as the hardest working man in show business. At one point it was James Brown, and then at one point it was Dave Grohl. But now I
Hmm.
have to say that Brandon Urie is giving Dave Grohl a real run for his money,
Absolutely. And the fact that his voice has the range it has is just so, I have to respect him as a musician, but also, he was on Broadway recently. I can't remember
Mhm.
the show he was in, but like the fact that he's been able to do things like that. He sang, one New Year's, I flipped on the TV and he was singing Queen, and his range is just I can't like listen to it without being awestruck, honestly.
I mean, for crying out loud, just this year, he sang the exact same song that Idina Menzel sang in Frozen 2. So the fact
Yeah.
that he is singing Into the Unknown, I mean, that's also a very interesting thing because, you know, the fact that usually when it comes, because you know, if you watch some of my videos, I don't know how often, but I'm sure you do because you are subscribed to
Hmm.
my channel, you do
Yep.
know that I do like to talk about Disney movies.
Oh
So
yeah.
when you see a popular Disney song, especially from a Disney princess movie, the single version is usually sung by a female vocalist. So the fact
Hmm.
that they got Brandon Urie to sing it instead of a female vocalist, that says a great deal about his talent, especially his vocal range.
Absolutely, it was extremely impressive. And I know, I think Demi Lovato had sung. Was it her that sang "Let It Go" back in when the first one
May
came out?
have been. It may have been.
I feel like
I'm not
it
exactly
was her.
sure.
Yeah, but he's done that for a couple of things now. I think he did a. I think Panic! At the Disco. They did a version of Bohemian Rhapsody for. I don't know if it was for Suicide Squad or something. They had done a version of it. It might have just been single. I can't remember because there was like a fake Suicide Squad soundtrack going around at the
Mhm.
time, and I found actually a lot of good artists from the fake soundtrack that people were putting out. But then he also, did his cover of the song from The Greatest Showman. So he's done a couple of those now.
Yeah, and another thing that I really like about him is that he still is keeping the essence of the original MTV music video alive. Like I still remember the Finders Keepers music video. That is one of the coolest things I've ever watched in my life. And I mean, you know, when I first heard them, you know, their first single was the big hit, I Write Sins Not Tragedies. And I was just like saying to myself, what the hell is this? Like, I didn't even think it was, I thought that it was an artist that I already knew. Like, I thought it might have been like the new single from
Yeah.
Newfound Glory or something like that at the time. Now I'm getting really old school. But yeah, I was just, yeah, he's, you know, I'm not really the biggest fan, but I have
Mhm.
so much respect for Panic at the Disco. I really do.
Absolutely. I was one of those people that listened to all the emo music, So I love me some Panic at the Disco. But I remember when I first discovered them, I didn't know the words because at the time my family was very sheltered. They sheltered me a lot when it came to music. So like we would listen to like contemporary Christian and country stations forever. And I did not, I got so tired. So I had to like jump into all the music as soon as I kind of got out of that and just kind of learn as much as possible and absorb as much as possible. And I remember hearing this I don't remember what song it was. I heard some song by them and I didn't know the name of it. So I went to school and I like sang part of it and I was like, what is this band? Who is it? And then they told me and I was like, okay, I have to listen to everything by them now because it's great. And they're one of those ones, and you mentioned them sounding familiar, and I think that's a sign of a new favorite is when you listen to an artist and they already sound like, some kind of familiarity to you. That honestly, I love that kind of feeling.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. For me, I gave the best band to the 1975
Oh yeah.
because they literally showed up in the decade. Their first album came out in 2013.
Hmm.
I actually was extremely late to the party. I didn't find out about them until their sophomore release, which was basically, at least I believe, their breakthrough. That was when everybody really started to discover who the 1975 was. And of course, their single, The Sound, was really big on the radio. But as somebody who loves the new wave sound of the 80s, you know, I'm an 80s product, even though I grew up and came of age in the grunge era and really still try to keep finding out, you know, what's cool and what's still with it and whatnot. I'm still looking for artists that I never heard of before to see like who's more recent. And I love the fact that there are so many artists right now that are really trying to capture that new wave 80s sound and sort of try and bring it back. Like the Killers tried to do that in the early 2000s, but you have bands like the 1975 really coming out into their own, and everybody loves this band so much. They're also very innovative, they're experimental, they really try and make each album that they create a different listen every time. And that's what I love about artists. That's what really, to me at least, gives them staying power. But also, when that sound is that popular, I mean, a band like Paramore can change their whole sound and go to that, like with After Laughter. And you know
Hmm.
what? I embraced that change when Paramore did that. I love that album. It's fantastic. But it's nice to know that bands like the 1975 are as popular as they are because it's giving other artists out there a chance to really try and break away from the audio tune and whatnot, and just really get back to the basics of making good music, not just singing good music.
It's so interesting that you mentioned Paramore too, because as soon as you said that, like, different albums coming out and having different sounds, I immediately thought of Paramore, because I was one of those people that Paramore was really, really important to me in high school. Like, I loved it. I loved singing it. That was some of the first songs that I learned to play and accompany myself on guitar with when I started studying music therapy in school. Like, that was some of the first music covers that I did. And it's also funny that you mentioned the 1975, because I had realized, like, I kept seeing mentions of them, like, on my Twitter, whatever, dashboard, timeline, I don't know what it's called on Twitter feed. And I kept seeing mentions of the 1975, and I was like, do I know anything by them? And so I was about to start looking them up and, like, trying to listen to them just this morning, actually. I was like, what do I know by them? Because a lot of times I'll hear songs and I'll know the song, but sometimes I won't know who it's by. And so they're one of those bands that I was like, what do I know by them? And I was just trying to figure it out and, like, listen to it this morning. So it's funny that you mentioned them.
Yeah, they have really, really good songs. I love their sound so much. And I know that they have a new album coming out in February of 2020. The only thing that I'm not too thrilled about is I don't know if it's being sold on CD, and I'm really hoping that it's not going to be one of those artists that decides, okay, we're just going to stream our music from now on. I just don't appreciate that. I'm someone who likes physical, and I know a lot of people that may not buy CDs anymore, but they buy vinyl now. So I'm just hoping that they will make a CD out of this album, because I would like to own a physical copy of it. So
that's a really interesting thing to say, because, you know, as you know, in my band, we just finished recording an album, and we're getting, like, the mastered mix, like, this weekend. So it's something that's happening right now to us, and we've been having that conversation of, do we stream? Do we have a physical copy? Like, what do we do with that? And I've tried to, you know, put that, you know, give that input that people do like to have physical copies. People do often stream, and that's more accessible to a lot of people, but there are still people out there that like those physical copies, and it's easier to, you know, see it, put it in someone's hand.
well,
So.
you know what it is? You know, do I stream? Sometimes, yes. But the reason why I stream is to sample, because if I like what I'm hearing, then I want to buy it. You know, I mean, that's one of the, I mean, I really don't want to go off on a tangent, because this is a whole other story for another time. But, you know, when they decided to basically change the way that people buy their music, because people would often buy an album just for that one specific song. There is that kind of person, but then there's the people like you and me. It's like, okay, I want to hear the rest of this album. And almost 99.9% of the time, the single that's on the radio is the worst song on the album.
Yes. Oh my gosh. When The Only Exception by Paramore was, like, on the radio, I told someone that I liked Paramore, and they were like, you mean that song, The Only Exception? I was like, no, I mean, like, everything by them, not just the one, you know. So it's yeah.
Hallelujah on Riot. That's my favorite song of theirs. I love that song.
Yes.
Beautiful song. Her vocal range is crazy.
All I Wanted Was You, that part where she just, like, primal screams in there.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
So now we're going to go into real musicianship here. Best pop culture classical composer. Now, what exactly does that mean? I'm really referring to the music soundtracks, you know, the songs that you hear in the movies, because, you know something, we love listening to those artists on the radio, but you know that if you hear the song to the main theme of Star Wars or Back to the Future or Indiana Jones, you're going to hum that along, and you're just going to enjoy every bit of it. Music soundtracks are relevant, and they are extremely important. So who do you think was the best composer of the last 10 years?
I hate to be basic, but I honestly, John Williams, he can do no wrong. He's been able to stay, you know, keep his music relevant. Even now, we still sing the same, like, motifs and motives from, like, songs that he's been having in movies for years. But he's definitely up there. I always am gonna, you know, include John Williams in that, but I also have to mention Danny Elfman. Because Danny Elfman's music, what he does with music, it just gets in your head, and it feels like anytime I hear it, I just know it's him. You know, it's just it's like I feel Danny Elfman, that just in there. And so those two are my main ones that I have to mention. Honestly, it's
I actually went with a composer who I actually discovered in 2010.
Ooh.
And the funny thing was, He was a guy that was already making music for a lot of movies, but they weren't being made in the US. They were foreign films. His
Ooh.
breakthrough was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and his name is Alexandre Desplat.
Okay. Okay.
He
Yeah.
has been nominated for so many Academy Awards for his scores. He is so versatile in his music, and I loved his score for both of the two Harry Potter films. I mean, Obliviate from Deathly Hallows Part 1 is a beautiful piece. The Battle of Hogwarts in Part 2 is such an epic sound, but I can't even tell you all the things that I have seen him compose. You got to go on to IMDb and you got to take a look at what he has done in the last 10 years. He has made so many amazing soundtracks, so many. It's incredible. And he is going to be one of the faces of film music that brings us in to the next decade. I'm guaranteeing you that.
It's interesting that you mentioned it as, in movie soundtracks, because I was a music composition major for exactly 1 year.
Okay.
It was an additional major with music therapy just for 1 year though, because, when I'm, feeling super creative, I would like compose in the middle of the night and do stuff like that. But what I found out is that, with composition and music composition, a lot of the focus has been redirected to video game soundtracks recently.
Okay.
That's been where a lot of people have been making a lot of good money with video games. So like, for example, if you listen to like the Skyrim soundtrack, like the primary Skyrim, song,
Okay.
like with the Dragonborn, like it has so much power in it. I use it at work a lot with a couple of exercises I do with my patients, but it has like such power to it that I find myself drawn more towards like video game soundtracks than even movie soundtracks sometimes.
Well, video game music is fantastic as well. I won't deny that. Yeah. Just in case you guys all want to know, if you want to hear Alexandre Desplat's newest soundtrack, go see Little Women this Christmas.
Interesting.
He's composing the soundtrack for that. He's composing the score for that film as well. So yeah, I just took a look at him quickly on IMDb. Yeah, so many things, so much work, but all great. So now comes one of the toughest questions, especially for music fans like us. What do you think was the best album of the last 10 years?
Oh no. That's so hard. Like I had the hardest time thinking of this because of the fact that I'm one of those people that like I hear a song and I love the song and then I try to find the album, but a lot of times I will get hooked on a couple of songs out of the whole thing. And just, thinking about this and thinking about the last 10 years, it has been so hard. It's so hard to think of something because and the way I am, I listen to so many genres that I can think of like specific albums in different genres, but I have a really hard time narrowing it down to one. Especially with, just like this year, I've fell in love with a new album, and that's probably been the most excited I've been about an album in a long time. Okay. So like that's the first one that comes to mind. And I have two, but the one this year that has primarily been in my head is it's an album called There Existed an Addiction to Blood, and it's a song, or it's an album by this experimental hip hop group called Clipping. Okay. And they actually recently there's this one song that they have, and it's basically about mermaids, but they kind of manifested from pregnant African women that were thrown overboard from slave ships, but they created this mythology behind it, and it actually got picked up by an author. If you've heard of River Solomon, they actually wrote a book about that specific song, and that came out just I think last month. But all of their music has really a lot of stories behind it, and a lot of really interesting meters and a lot of interesting techniques. They use a lot of harsh noise, so some of the songs are kind of hard to get past because of that. But There Existed an Addiction to Blood is their most recent album, and it has a big horror vibe to it. But just listening to it, I can't listen to it without getting super, super pumped and excited, because just the techniques used and the meters, they're so unique and interesting and difficult that I haven't felt that way about an album in a long time. So even though we've had a whole 10 years, that's the album that really just, in the past 10 years, that's the most excited I've been about an album.
That's good to know. Yeah, it was a little tough for me as well. And even I revisited my answer to see if this one still deserves the top spot, and I really think it does. And the reason why I chose this specific album from this artist is because this was the album that took this specific artist, and basically this person was one of the most well-known, one of the most praised, one of the most decorated artists of the last 10 years. The album is Adele's 21.
That was one of my top three.
You see, like, I actually discovered Adele with 19 because Chasing Pavements is still my favorite song of hers. I love that song. But 21 brought her to superstardom, because what really made me so happy about that album, and this is why I chose this one, is because that sound. You would never expect this kind of generation to embrace her music like they did. It's incredible. And she's still putting out albums, even though she's on a hiatus right now. But she has gotten so many Grammys. She's gotten, she helped get an Academy Award for James Bond. She sang Skyfall, which is one of the best songs in the James Bond song library. I mean, she is a truly special artist. Like, to hone in sounds from like the 1930s and 40s and 50s and make it relevant. Like, how do you do that? She did it.
And not to mention, just watching vocalists and singer-songwriter type folks, the way that people have started singing, they've mimicked a lot of that sort of the British sound of singing. A lot of songwriters have that are American have started to sort of change the way they sing certain vowels and stuff, and it's happened since Adele started getting a lot bigger, I've noticed. But that was actually one of the top three that I was thinking album-wise, because it's really rare for me to listen to an album all the way through without skipping around.
Right.
That's an album I literally, in the car, since I love singing, I'll sit there and I'll, like, all the way to work, I'll listen to that whole album, because it's one of the few things I do have on CD, and I'll just sing the whole thing and I'll get to work and not have a voice. But it's just so beautiful, and there's so much emotion in her voice.
Yes.
And she just keeps putting out songs that are iconic and that everyone wants to sing.
And she's another one of those artists. It's like when she's not doing much, everybody's talking about her, because she's one of the few artists that everybody is like on bated breath. Like, where is your next album? We want more music from you. Like, everybody wants more music from her right now. And you want to know something? I think we need some music from her right now.
Absolutely. We turn into gluttons when she comes in. We just want all the music from her.
Yeah. I will admit that her songs did kind of get a little overplayed from that album, but you still can't hate her, because you just have to basically say to yourself, there is nobody in music today that sounds like this. She is literally Highlander. There can be only one. There is no other artist that sounds like her music right now, which is incredible.
Yeah, and the music behind, like, her voice is usually pretty simple. And I think I really, really like that aspect of it. A couple of her more recent songs, there's one or two that I wasn't I don't remember the name of the song, the send my love to send your love to your love, or whatever that song is. I don't know the title of that song, but like, that song I wasn't as much of a fan, because the way it was edited was a little bit different. But I love just that classic, just here's piano and here's her voice, and there we go. Or here we have maybe a kick drum, but it's just like that simplicity. Only people that have that strong of a voice can get away with that.
And the fact that she got into this so young just shows us that she has so much more to give. That's the way I look at it, you know?
Yeah, and it's almost like just titling her albums by, like, her, like, age.
Yeah.
It's almost like, look what I'm doing at this age right now. Like,
not just that, and not just that. She's okay with sharing her age. That I give her props. I really do. So, what do you think was the best single of the last 10 years?
This was hard for me, because I was trying to remember what songs were singles, and, like, so that was difficult. And I actually had written Rolling in the Deep as the best single.
Oh.
Which is funny. That one, and then also I wrote Uptown Funk, but I couldn't remember if that was a single or not.
Oh, that was definitely a single. Yeah. That was a single. That's
Uptown
a good one,
Funk.
too. Yeah, you know what? Bruno Mars is another one of those artists that did define this decade,
Absolutely. He's honestly, when I think of him, I also kind of think of the way Michael Jackson, like, created his own sound and was also dancing and had his own style. Bruno Mars has that same vibe about it to me. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of like taken on that role in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was yeah.
he's one of those great artists like that.
I wasn't so keen on him at the beginning. I thought that
Yeah.
his songs were just sort of like plain, but then when he started doing songs like Uptown Funk and that single that he had with Cardi B last year, I mean, like,
Yes, he's done a couple of
that's
songs with her, and there's a song he did. Was that Bruno Mars? It might have been Macklemore. I can't remember. But like just his style, like even the way the clothes that he wears, it's so uniquely him, and he has his like little group. He always looks like he's having fun. Like it's honestly, it's just such a fun artist. Like I'm the same as you. Like I didn't like
yeah,
some of his earlier stuff as much, and I was like,
yeah.
why is this a song? But then he got to me. He wore me
Yeah.
down.
The last album that he gave us had some really good songs. Like What I Like is just a fun listen. 24 Karat Magic is such a fun song. You know, they're
You can't not
good.
dance.
Yeah, and I remember his Super Bowl performance. He was dancing like freaking James Brown on stage. It was
Yes.
crazy.
And
Yeah,
there
but
was what was it? There was another song. I can't remember what it is though. Like Grenade. Oh my gosh, the song Grenade by him. Like that's one of the ones that I had to cover immediately when I heard it on the radio. I'm like, I'm gonna sing this song.
There's
And
Just the Way You Are. That was the first single
yeah,
that we ever got from him. That one got too annoying for me.
yeah, I wasn't a big fan of
That one and Grenade I really didn't care for. But the more he started making music and the more versatile and more fun he just started to get, I just really got into it. But yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned a song like Uptown Funk because I really had to go back and say, okay, what were those songs that got so overplayed on the radio, but I still like them? The best single of the last 10 years for me was Happy by Pharrell.
Yep, I can feel that. Okay, so
That's a great song. It's
Happy is such a good song.
because you know what? That's how you feel when you're listening to it. You just get into a good mood. It's fun.
The number of times I've used that at work because, we'll sometimes, doing music therapy and stuff, like you want to have songs that kind of represent certain emotions. And sometimes when you play that one, you're like, okay, this is, if you had to describe happy, how would you, describe it in music? And I'll like play some examples, and that's always on the list because it's literally in the title. It's so good. And I also, what was it? There's part of that song though that I always think he's saying my name.
Oh,
And
really?
I don't know why. It's the part was like, bring me down. I always think he's saying Lakeland after that, which is like my full name. And I literally always think he's saying my name every time it comes on. I'm like, I know it's not, but I always feel like he's saying my name.
Well, you also know that it's one of the biggest songs of the last 10 years when Weird Al makes a parody.
Yeah, no, that's like a rite of passage. If he does a parody, then you know it's good.
If Weird Al parodies your music, or if you ended up as a guest appearance on The Simpsons, your career has officially been made. Those are the two things that has to happen to you as a musician.
That's when you know you've made it.
Yeah, it's a great song. So let's go into soundtracks. What do you think was the best soundtrack of the last 10 years?
Oh gosh, there's so many good ones. I had to say though, The Greatest Showman. I really had to, because there were just so many singable great songs that like made you feel stuff. When I saw, I still haven't seen the movie, but I've listened to the soundtrack multiple times. That's one of the few soundtracks that I have listened to repeatedly since it's come out. And it's just, all of them are so emotional. This Is Me. Can't watch the video without crying.
A Million Dreams is my favorite song on that soundtrack. Yeah, that's a beautiful song.
Absolutely. Never Enough. I love it so much. I really do.
Well, then maybe I decided to go a little bit cliche because I think the best soundtrack was La La Land.
Oh, okay.
La La Land is, you know what? I know that there are some people out there that don't like the movie, but I am somebody that actually, I may not look it when I do my videos, or maybe or if you've watched enough of my videos, you probably know this. But I love musicals. I really do. And when I found out that La La Land was coming out and it was going to be directed by Damien Chazelle, who gave us Whiplash, which is just like one of the greatest movies I saw. But to know that he was going to make a musical, I had to see what this was all about. And the thing that I loved so much about the soundtrack is none of it sounded like it was recycled from musicals in the past. This was its own new animal. And I loved every bit of it except for City of Stars. I think that is the worst song in the whole CD. It's just like, why did that one win the Academy Award for Best Song? There were so many better songs on that soundtrack that are so much better, but as a complete package, it's a beautiful soundtrack. I love it. I bought it. I own the movie. I have the Funko Pop duo of the two of them. I have to have Mia and Sebastian. They're right there on my shelf, right across from me. So like, I was sold on that movie, and the soundtrack is a perfect match.
I have to say, with movie soundtracks, there's two others I just have to mention. Frozen, the original Frozen soundtrack was so, like, you can't even go into winter and it snow without somebody singing "Do You Want to Build a Snowman?" Me and my husband did our engagement announcement singing "Love Is an Open Door" to each other, like, just because it was fun. And like "Let It Go" is going to be epic forever. I did a parody of it, of DNF on my channel last year, and it was one of my favorite things to do. Like that soundtrack. Even "Reindeers Are Better Than People." Like,
oh, that's my favorite song from the movie. That's my favorite song from the movie.
And the guy that sang that song is actually, he played King. Oh gosh, now I can't remember. Henry and Hamilton. Yeah, I don't know. He played the original guy on Hamilton in that soundtrack. And speaking of Hamilton, the Moana soundtrack, which was primarily Lin-Manuel Miranda, it was a good soundtrack.
Oh, that's a great soundtrack, and you know what? Even Dwayne Johnson's singing is a revelation. It may not be the greatest, but I love him when he sings "You're Welcome." It's a funny song.
It's such a fun song, and the way that they incorporated some of the rhythms of like haka into that. But then also, as I was listening to Moana soundtrack, I did not know Lin-Manuel Miranda had done it, and then I heard this one song, and it was like a similar, like, just these intervals that were used were the exact same as this one song in Hamilton. And I was like, wait a minute. Wait a minute, who did this? And then I found out it was him, and I was like, I was right. I felt so successful.
And I mean, even though it's not new music, I would also say that one of the best soundtracks that came out in the last 10 years was the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack. Just because of even the second one, just having all those great songs from the 70s and 80s and even from the late 60s all in one place in a Marvel movie is just fantastic.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, I also love, speaking of Disney, I also really liked the Wreck-It Ralph soundtrack.
It was really good.
I like Henry Jackman, and I'm also a big fan of Owl City because Owl City put a lot of their songs into animation in the last couple of years. They put When Can I See You Again is it's a real near and dear song to my heart because of the fact that I first started listening to it when I first met my wife, and after our first date, that was the only song that I played, and that's still my ringtone for her when she calls me on my cell phone. And Shine Your Way is on the Crude soundtrack. Adam Young just puts all these great songs onto movie soundtracks.
You really can't get past songs that are like significant of certain relationships. Like they'll stay that way. And no, Hooked on a Feeling got like, I absolutely love that song now, and I don't have enough 70s songs that I love that I know of, and so after that I was like, ooh, I need more. I need to listen to more songs.
Yeah, I've got a lot of good I listen to a lot of good 70s music. I think one of the funniest things was a recent tweet. Someone actually said, okay, my alarm now on my cell phone that wakes me up is Mr. Blue Sky from ELO. Is this gonna ruin the song for me? And so I wrote to her, I said, no, just picture dancing baby Groot every time it goes on and you'll be fine.
That's fair. I've had to discover more 70s music because everybody in my band is like 20 years older than me, and like at least, and so they keep wanting to do these covers of these songs, and I'm like, I don't know that song. And so I have to learn.
The 70s is, you know what? The 70s, if you look past the disco era, there's a lot of really good stuff in there.
Never look past disco. You gotta respect the disco. It's you dancing at least.
Okay, well, let's go into the next category, and that is most noticeable artist. Now, what that means is, the artist who truly made a name for themselves. Not necessarily the best one, but the one that throughout the last 10 years, it's like when that name was mentioned, you knew exactly who that was. You knew that person had made it. Who do you think that was?
So just clarifying. So is this going to be like a new one, or is this just in general?
Pretty much someone who pretty much emerged in the last 10 years, if you could do that.
All right. Well, we've already mentioned the ones that I put, but I definitely Bruno Mars and Adele are both two that I feel like have really made themselves iconic, made themselves
Right.
household names.
Hmm.
But one that we haven't mentioned, Ariana Grande. I don't really listen to Ariana Grande,
Hmm.
but she has really broken out and become more prominent in the past 10 years.
Especially considering the fact there are not that many who have the songbird vocalist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And while I don't really like, I don't know if I could think of any songs that I really, really like of hers. The fact that she has grown so big, she was involved in a pretty big tragedy as
Oh
well
yeah.
recently.
Yeah, that was
Um,
sad.
she's gone through a lot of tough things, and I think part of the reason that I'm not a huge fan is because I really want her music to be deeper, especially because
Yeah.
she's experienced these things. But she's unapologetically herself, and I think that's something to be respected, along with her
Well,
range.
speaking of unapologetically being yourself, my choice was Lady Gaga.
Oh my gosh, you're so right.
Because there was no one in this world who didn't know who Lady Gaga was. Even if you didn't listen to her music, you knew who Lady Gaga was. And this decade, even though her first single dropped literally at the end of 2009, you know, she just exploded in the last 10 years. Forget the controversial dresses that she wore. She really, at some point to me, I thought she was going to be the next Madonna. And
Absolutely.
and considering the fact that she did a album with Tony Bennett, the fact that she just was in a Academy Award nominated film in A Star Is Born, showing the fact that she has been in American Horror Story. The
She has
woman
acting
is
chops.
the woman is a true interesting animal all on her own. And that is and she's a true unique piece of this music world. And even though I don't collect her albums, I won't deny her greatness. She truly is one of
Absolutely.
the best.
Absolutely. And she's, I believe she's a classically trained pianist as well. Um, but she does have a really, really great voice. And I think a lot of people don't realize how great her voice is because of some of her songs are more like dancey and things like that. But of course, A Star Is Born showed us, she's not to be trifled with as when it comes to her voice. It's
Mhm.
great. And the way that she approaches music, I respect so much because she does approach it as an art. And it's not just, hey, let me see what sells, let me see what I can do, with this, but she approaches it as, I want to create this song, and she even outwardly shows, this is who I'm going to create. I'm going to create myself as well. And so
Well,
I really, really appreciate that aspect of her. So
I will tell you this.
mhm.
I was one of those people that always liked to rag on the pop stars, but
Yeah.
the moment where my attitude changed of her was on the Academy Awards. I don't know what year, but she sang The Hills Are Alive. And
Yes.
my mind was blown. I didn't even know that she
Mhm.
had that vocal range. And her persona on that stage, she didn't wear the bubble dress or the meat dress or anything controversial. She came like she was there and belonged. And
Yeah.
that performance proved that she belonged there and that she basically belongs anywhere right now in the world of
Mhm.
music.
Anywhere she wants. She dipped into country a little bit. Like, she belongs where she wants to belong, and I like that she just makes, if she doesn't see a space for her, she makes her own space for herself. She's like, this is where I'm going to
Absolutely.
be now. And I love
Okay.
that she just owns it.
I agree. So in the last 10 years, what do you think was the artist that improved the most? It could be an artist, it could be a band.
For this one, I actually did mention Taylor Swift because I believe that she really came into her own.
Mhm.
And even with this last album, there are more songs that aren't about just her relationships. There's a little bit more to some of her songs, and she's experimented with style. She's experimented with different things. If we think of the Kanye incident, back in the stage there, if you think of her personality then versus now, I don't think she would stand for like someone interrupting her now. And that shows, not only, improvement in her music, but improvement in her, ability to be assertive and her ability to kind of know who she is. And I think that's a huge improvement, honestly.
Yeah, and if people want to, they can see her in Cats this winter.
Yeah, I probably won't watch it because it's kind of creeping me out. I would probably only watch it for James Corden and for Jennifer Hudson because
Right.
her voice is,
Well, Jennifer Hudson's something truly special. She really
yes,
is.
her voice
Yeah.
is just makes me emotional there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I actually went with the band Train
Oh, okay.
because
Hey,
I'm
Soul
thinking
Sister.
because you think about 1999 when they first came out. I mean, don't get me wrong. Still to this day, I love Meet Virginia. It's a beautiful song. But I remember when their second album comes out and Drops of Jupiter was just like popular for 2 seconds and then everybody hated it because it was overplayed. But yeah, Hey Soul Sister became one of the most sung songs by people, and their last couple of albums have sold. People love them. Like, even though my wife hates Heart and Soul because it's just that famous piano song that every little kid plays when they're first starting to learn,
Yup.
you know, the fact that they're turning it into a pop song is pretty interesting. And then there's the I don't know if it's 100 ways or 1,000 ways to say goodbye. That's a good song too. I like that song. But they definitely gave us a much more lasting impression where they could have actually been a flash in the pan and just never heard from again.
Honestly, like I'm the type of person, I still love Drops of Jupiter because it's one of the best examples of what's the word? Like a loose associations in like song lyrics. When you look up that what is the word for that? There's another word for that and I can't remember what it is right now. Oh yeah, nonsensical words. The things that come up are, I am the walrus and Drops of Jupiter. Those are the two things that come up when you look up nonsensical, along with like Alice in Wonderland. But and as it applies to music, I love that nonsensical kind of, weird metaphors. And that's actually something, when you mentioned Owl City, that's something I really loved about them, is the pictures that they paint with words are so weird and quirky, and I loved that. So,
Yeah.
I really, really love Drops of Jupiter.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm glad you do. I really am. So now let's get into an interesting category, because this is always the one that, like, I love talking about this, the one-hit wonder.
Yes.
When you take a look at the one-hit wonder and you think of some of those songs, especially from the 80s, when you think of some of those one-hit wonders, it's like there's something special about knowing that you were a one-hit wonder. So in the last 10 years, who do you think was the best one-hit wonder? I will just say this. I am going to be really shocked if we share it, but I think you'll really like mine.
Okay. So when it comes to this, it's even getting weirder though, because with the emergence of like TikTok, it's really easy for a song, just one specific song, to be like really popular, especially for just one segment of it. But also like these video challenges over the years have been really interesting, and they've made a lot of songs one-hit wonders, including like the Harlem Shake and Gangnam Style. Like those have been one-hit wonders. I don't know, you're going to mention one of those, but like, those are ones that have become one-hit wonders. But mine that I had to mention was Gautier and Somebody That I Used to Know.
Oh God, I couldn't deal with that song. That one got me badly, really bad. I don't like that song at all.
I think my favorite thing is the instruments used in it are ones that I played.
Yeah, I think that's the part that I just think that's the part that makes me get a little bit irked when I'm listening to it.
I don't know why I love it so much. I really don't know why I like that song, but I just do. I don't know. I think I like duets too. Maybe that's what, I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I just now learned how to pronounce the band though.
Okay. Well, mine was Gangnam Style.
I knew it. Okay, I knew it when I saw it.
I had to. I mean, first of all, whether you want to believe it or not, Psy is actually the reason why people started to notice K-pop a lot more in this country. He pretty much is the reason why K-pop is here and popular right now.
You're completely right. One, Gangnam Style, the music video was so ridiculous. I remember when it first came out, I was like, this is so ridiculous. But then listening to it more, I'm like, this is such fun music. And then like looking at all the records it broke on YouTube and just on the charts in general, it's insane. Like,
I know.
He did a lot for the genre.
And not that many people really talk about him anymore, but it's just like that song, as terribly stupid as it is, it's too much fun. I still remember that I still have friends that like requested when we went to clubs, like we would request that song get played. Everybody just loved dancing around like a bunch of flippin' idiots. Nobody cared. Everybody loved doing it because it was just a fun, carefree song, and that's what makes a great one-hit wonder. A truly great, like Mickey by Tony Basil, you know?
Absolutely. And I think, and with K-pop, dancing is such a big part of the genre as well. Like people learn the dances, and that's part of like that culture. We don't have that as much, you know, in American music anymore. Like I think with some of the boy bands, we had a little bit of it, you know, with NSYNC and Bye 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 and stuff like
Uh-huh.
that. But with K-pop, it's such a huge part of the genre. But a lot of times, it's really, really complicated dance moves. Gangnam
Oh
Style
yeah.
is dance moves that most people can do. They're exhausting, but you can do them. Well, I guess it was just a couple months ago at the BookNet Fest prom that we had. Like it was so much fun, but when they played that song, we were all doing it and dancing it. It was like it's just so fun.
I'm still trying to figure out how BTS is doing their dance moves on Boy with Love, because those moves are just so. I swear to God, I try them and I burn a ton of calories when I try.
Yeah, that they all they do is just dance and while singing too. Like I don't understand. It's very that's actually what first drew me to BTS was watching dancing videos because I like to watch people dance, and I was like,
Right.
what is this? Why is it so good?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now let's take a look at some comebacks, because
Okay.
sometimes you can get a big surprise, but sometimes there's a comeback that you sort of knew was coming and you were just hoping that it was good. So let's go with your best expected comeback, the band or the artist you knew was going to be making a comeback and you were excited either way.
Okay, so this one for me as a fan when I was in high school would have to be the Jonas Brothers.
Okay.
Because they did kind of mention that they were going to come back. It was still kind of a surprise, but that was one of the concerts that one of the bigger concerts that I ever went to when I was younger was the Jonas Brothers concert. But I didn't completely expect it because I really liked Joe Jonas's new band. I loved the sound that their band had. I wasn't as big of a fan of Nick Jonas's music, but when they, you know, announced they were going to come back, I was so excited. And their music is still, you know, a similar style. It's still really fun, but it's still relevant. And so that would probably be just, I don't know if it was because of the hype, but I don't know if that's why it was so successful. But
It's
yeah,
the second coming of Hanson. That's the way I looked at it.
pretty much.
So I'm going to go with the one that's way out of the box, but I really think the best expected comeback was Weird Al Yankovic. He made his
Yes.
album Mandatory Fun, and
Mhm.
to this day, I actually still think it's his best album. It might also have been his last, but the fact that he put out a single music video for each song on that album onto YouTube like every single day, and there are some amazing songs on this album. My favorite song on that album is actually now my favorite Weird Al song. It's Word Crimes, which is the spoof of Blurred Lines.
Yeah.
And it's
I heard about that.
hilarious because it's basically showing how people use improper grammar. It's hilarious. It's a teacher's favorite song.
I love when they do stuff like that you can actually like use, you know, just relevant to other topics. I love that.
Yeah, that song to me is probably one of his most brilliantly written ones, because it's just so, the lyrics are fantastic. You got to check it out if you haven't heard it. I mean, like, you obviously know the song Blurred Lines. You remember
Oh
how
yeah.
popular that song
Oh
was.
yeah.
But,
Couldn't
you
go anywhere
know,
without hearing it.
yeah, and you also had Tacky, which was the Happy ripoff. That was also a great one. And there are also some more. Oh, yeah, Handy. That's a great one. The Iggy Azalea spoof. That was a great one.
Where haven't her?
Yeah, you know what? She had that one album. She was so, and I will, you know something? Let me talk about Iggy Azalea. I
Go for
liked
it.
her. I liked that
She
song.
was fun. She was a mess, but it was fun.
I
She
like, she and Macklemore, they were like in the hip hop genre, and they gave me these two unique styles. And at the same
mhm.
time, they sounded a little bit like they were trying to hone in that classic hip hop style, like you heard from Run DMC, like in the
Yeah,
1980s.
and they're
I
one of my
like that.
favorite rap groups. Like Run DMC is my jam, and I found Iggy Azalea kind of reminded me of Little Mama, her music, and Macklemore was just so interesting, like so unique and interesting. And but he has a lot of songs that aren't as popular that I really still enjoy,
Yeah.
like Downtown and stuff like that.
I'm still a huge fan of Thrift Shop. Thrift Shop. When I heard
Oh,
Thrift Shop,
absolutely.
oh god, that's such a great song. Just the lyrics of the song are fun in the way. I mean, like I'm a Beastie Boys fan. That's
Yeah,
my big thing. Them and
so it
Run
makes sense.
DMC, and Public Enemy are my three favorites. I love those bands.
Makes sense.
But yeah. So let's talk about an unexpected comeback. A band who just made an album and you liked them, but you had no idea they were even making a new one. And when you heard it, hopefully you liked it.
So this one was difficult. This is one of the ones that were difficult for me, because for, if I think about a single artist, I would think about Paul McCartney making that song with Rihanna and Kanye.
Right.
That one song, because that was completely unexpected for me. I was like, wait, what just happened? Why is he on the radio with them? And that was like really unexpected for me. But as far as like a whole album, that's just so difficult for me to name one, because I often discover things a little bit later than I think about it. So honestly, I think that the Beyonce album Lemonade was
I remember when that came out.
that was a big deal too. Like everyone was talking about it. She kind of stepped a little bit away from the pop sound and a little bit more into the hip hop sound in that album. And I really liked it. It was really good.
Good. Very nice. Yeah, I remember when it came out, like nobody expected it and everybody went crazy over it.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna throw out a band that very few people might actually know, but you might have heard them. You probably have heard a song or two of theirs. So they came out in the late 1990s. They were one of my favorites. They were in the whole punk genre, and they were gone. And then all of a sudden, they come out with an album in 2016 after like being on hiatus for like almost 8-9 years. Eve 6.
Oh, I don't know if I've heard of anything of theirs.
Eve 6 is a band that to me is awesome. I love these 6. They're an amazing trio, and their last album, I believe, came out in 2003 before this new one. Then all of a sudden in 2016, their 4th album, Speak in Code, just drops, and I'm like, I have to listen to this because I had not heard Eve 6 in such a long time, and they blew me away with this album. I loved the 4th album because I wasn't really the biggest fan of the 3rd one, but their first 2 albums are great. It's their self-titled album, and then there is Horoscope. That's their 2nd one. They have a well-known song called Here's to the Night. It became like a graduation song when the album came out, like in 2000, 2001, I believe. Yeah, it's a good song, but Eve 6 is a really good band. If you're into some of those great sounds of the punk of the late 1990s, like if you like the stuff, if you were listening to bands like Green Day, if you were listening to bands like Blink-182, or even something like My Chemical Romance, like they're not emo per se, but they fall, you're going to put them in this category with them because that's what they sounded like. And their vocals are very good. Max Collins has a really unique voice. And if you actually hear a song of theirs that you might recognize, you let me know. But yeah, they made this 4th album, and I loved it. I thought it was great.
Interesting. Okay, I'll have to check that out. So I may have heard something, but I might not know that it's there.
Yeah, it's EVE and the number 6. That's who they are.
Yeah, I just looked them up while you're talking about because I was trying to see if I knew any of the songs. I'll have to listen to them though.
Okay,
Absolutely.
So now here's a thing that I love to do, because I still remember when they did this on the Emmys or possibly even the Golden Globes. I don't remember what award ceremony it was, but they basically gave an award to a television show that you didn't, like, nobody was watching. So I wanted to try and tap into this as well, like the best band of the last 10 years that you're probably not listening to. Now, I will probably come up with a name that you know, but I know for a solid fact that very few people are listening to this band that I chose. But you, of course, are going to go first.
Okay. So, of course, I mentioned Clipping is a group that I really enjoy that no one really knows about. So if it's one that I'm not listening to, or is it one that people in general are not listening to?
It's the one that you're listening to, but you're pretty sure that not that many people are.
Okay. Yeah, so Clipping would have to be mine because they're one of my favorite groups. Because they're an experimental hip hop group and they're very out there. They make a lot of interesting choices. But as far as like an actual band, I would have to say the Pretty Reckless. The lead singer Taylor Momsen was Who in the live action Grinch movie, but now she's the lead singer of a rock band, and they're a really fun band. I haven't listened to them recently. It was more the early, like 2014. Like the early 2010s, but that band is really, really good, and I feel like they don't get recognized as much.
Okay. I chose Churches.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And the reason why I specifically went with them, because I wasn't listening to them. And all of a sudden, one of my friends on YouTube just starts raving about Churches. And I'm like, who the hell is Churches? And then I started listening to their music, And in about a span of 2 weeks, I bought all 3 of the albums that were already out. And I mean, I think they're starting to gain some traction now, merely because of the fact that they had that single with Marshmello.
Oh yeah,
Is
that'll
the
do
big
it.
name right now, but I'm just like, I don't understand how anybody cannot like this band. And here's another band that is taking that new wave sound. And I always say that when a female vocalist is in rock music or even in metal, there's just something that kicks that whole thing up a notch, like tenfold. It's just,
Absolutely.
I love the raw power of a female vocalist in hard rock or just rock in general. And I also love the fact that these guys are Scottish. I love the fact that this band is Scottish, you know?
That definitely makes it even better.
I'm like, how many bands do I like? It's hard enough for me to find artists from Ireland, but Scottish bands? Like, I love these
Absolutely.
guys. I love Churches so much. They are such an amazing band. I discovered them through YouTube, people talking about it, but also because of the fact that one day I was in a movie theater waiting for my movie to come on, and The Mother We Share comes on, and I'm like, what is this song? I'm going to Shazam it. I say that Shazam is probably the greatest tool for any music fan that has come out in the last
Absolutely.
15, 20 years. I love it. I wish I invented it because I would have been a millionaire. But
Absolutely.
yeah, the funny thing about Shazam is it's the thing that we all were thinking that of doing, of making, and none of us ever realized that we could all do it, you know?
Honestly, Shazam, my little quick access tab on my phone, because I use it so often, and I like that it pulls up the lyrics too on there. It's so great. But also on this specific topic, I forgot to mention it, but Glass Animals is one of my favorite bands as well that I wish more people would listen to, because anything by them I love. And they're another one that I discovered off of that fake Suicide Squad album that was out at some point, and they had a cover of Love Lockdown by Kanye West, and I was like, well, this is interesting. And then their whole album, like all of their songs they have this weird sound to them that I can't really describe, and it's very unique and interesting.
Yeah.
So.
And with Shazam, I have discovered songs that I love in the weirdest places, from restaurant bathrooms to women's lingerie stores, just because my wife is shopping and I'm waiting for her. Like, I've discovered songs in stores. It's crazy. It's crazy. Wherever there's a speaker, you just hold your phone up and you can hear any song that you like.
Absolutely, I love it.
Yeah,
I've
it's
done it with a
great.
passing car before, and I heard a song and I like held it out.
That's great. That is great. All the clever ways that we Shazam they also make excellent stories.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think is the band that never should have made a comeback?
This is a hard one to say. So I don't know if this classifies as a comeback, but mine is just Maroon 5. I don't like their new stuff at all.
Oh, can I just do a little bit of a spoiler? They're
Please
coming
go.
up later, and we can talk a little bit more about them very, very soon. I promise. The band, for me, I'm going to throw a real one out of the hat. I chose the band Hoobastank.
Oh, I didn't even know they were still doing so. I didn't know they were still doing
You see? You know how many albums they have?
How many?
6.
Why?
They're a band that I have been a fan of ever since I heard Crawling in the Dark. That was such a great song. The Reason was such an amazing album, and their 3rd album is good. Their 4th album is okay. Their 5th album, I think, is very, very underappreciated. It's called Fight or Flight.
Yeah.
But their last album, Push and Pull, came out earlier this year, and it's terrible. There's
so
just
sad.
like the thing that you love so much about Hoobastank is not in that album at all. There's no song on that album that I like at all. It's
so sad.
I own it. I will still keep it because they are a band. I mean, it's like if it took them 6 albums to finally get it wrong, you know, that's not terrible. You know what I mean?
That's true. That's true. It's sad that it didn't work out with the last one though.
But it's so funny that your reaction was the exact same thing that everyone I know. Whenever I mention Hoobastank's new album, they're like, Hoobastank still makes music?
They're one of those ones that seem like it was like a while back and that they're done now. You know?
Yeah, I mean, The Reason came out in 2001. That's how long it's been. But yeah, that album is going to be 20 years old in 2 years. But no, they've been making music since The Reason, and yeah, they have 6 albums to their name right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if there's any band that I wish could make a comeback, it was Semisonic. They are one of my favorites. I love Semisonic.
Interesting.
Yeah, I love their music so much. The Great Divide, I think, is such an underappreciated album, and I love that sound. Dan Wilson also is probably one of the best vocalists that there's nobody out there that sounds like Dan Wilson. I love his sound.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just throw out Maroon 5 right now because that was my most annoying act slash band of the last 10
Yeah.
years. They made me so sad. I mean, I dare say something controversial, but I love the fact that Adam Levine thinks that he is a black R&B artist,
Yeah.
especially when you listen to his last album, which is absolutely terrible. But I mean, when you take a look at Songs About Jane and
Yeah.
you take a look at the last two albums after that, it's like, how do you go from something so amazing
Mhm.
to this? Like,
I
what the
liked
hell did you
them.
do?
I liked them. I'm so upset. I liked Maroon 5, and now I'm just like, what? And Girls Like You, I hate it. I hate that
Yeah,
song.
you want to know what's really funny? People love Girls Like You, but you want to know why they love Girls Like You? Because
The
they
music
like
video.
yes, that's the same reason why
Mhm.
so many people like This Is America by Childish Gambino. They like
Yeah.
the music video. The song is really nothing but noise.
I like that one part with the bass in the song. That's it. I don't like the rest of
Yeah.
the song.
There's no serious lyrics to it. I mean,
Mm-mm.
like, it's really about just watching the music video and understanding what's going on in the
Yeah,
music video. That's what sells it. And that's the
absolutely.
same thing with Girls Like You. The
Mhm.
song, because the song itself, you listen to the lyrics, has nothing to do with what the music video is representing.
No, it really, honestly, you're totally right about that. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, Maroon 5 is honestly, they're annoying.
Because it was like, because when they made their fourth album, Overexposed, like, yeah, it got poppy, and I did
Mhm.
like some of the songs on the
Yeah.
album, but I was like saying to myself, I really hope that this is not the direction that they're going in, and then they make
Mhm.
five, and then it keeps going in that direction, even though there are still some songs on there. Because, like, I like Sugar. I think it's a really catchy song.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, I don't mind Sugar. I do mind that it doesn't seem like there's instruments anymore.
Yeah,
You know?
it's like when you hear songs like Harder to Breathe or
Mhm.
Sunday Morning or I Can't
Yes.
Lie or my favorite song of theirs, Makes Me Wonder. It's like when you
Yes.
hear these songs, it's like this was Maroon 5. Like, what the
Absolutely.
hell? What happened to Adam Levine? Like, what was in his brain? I
Yeah.
don't get it because I sampled that sixth album and I was like, no, thank you. This is not,
Mm-mm.
no,
No. And
no.
yeah, and now I can't say that I like Maroon 5 because I don't like current Maroon 5. I like old Maroon 5. I can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was able to go. The fact that I was able to stick out as long as I could as being
Mhm.
a fan of their band, I can't. I
Yeah.
mean, unless they finally wise up and their seventh album sounds like one of their first three,
Yeah.
maybe I'll get back on the wagon. You know what? I'll tell you. I'm wondering if they even play anything from their first three albums at any of their concerts anymore.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah.
So, who do you think is the most annoying artist, or do you really want to say Maroon 5 again?
Uh, I am scared to say because you said this one earlier, but personally, Taylor Swift gets on my nerves.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's okay.
I've never liked her voice or her sound very much. Um, so that's just personally, I don't connect. I don't like I like fun lyrics sometimes, but sometimes her lyrics are so on the nose that I don't like them as much sometimes.
And you want to know something? Here's my attitude about Taylor Swift.
Mhm.
As an artist, she's done wonders, but as a person, I can't stand her.
Yeah.
And
She
that's
gets on my nerves. I just
it's just because she's been all these things that she talks about and all this controversy. I mean,
yeah.
I swear to God, and I mean, I know that all the Swifties are going to come running at me with pitchforks at the end of this, but I swear to God, she's going to be a crazy cat lady.
Yeah.
She
And
cannot hold on to a man. She cannot.
I feel that she does a lot of victim like creating like a victim role for herself a lot of times, and that just like recently she kind of sicked her fans on the people that are over her label or whatever on the rights to her music. And a lot of artists have been doing that recently, but it's also important for them to know that like at some point they did sign a contract and they might be working their way out of it and it might take time, but that's the business also. And it's a very interesting move for her to put out the names of the people that are, you know, she's in contract with. You know, just it was an interesting move on her part, sort of. So.
Oh, now
Yeah.
listen, I don't disagree with you,
Yeah.
and to a certain degree, obviously, I agree.
Yeah.
So, where are they now? What band do you feel, or what artist do you feel is like, what happened, and why aren't they making music? Apparently, I found out that My Choice actually made an album this year, but nobody's talking about it. So as far as I'm concerned, they're still MIA.
So at first mine was Fall Out Boy, and then I remembered you mentioned recently an album that they released last year, but my Civil Wars. I don't know if you know
Okay.
about the Civil Wars. So I actually went to one of their concerts in college, and they broke up actually. But their music was so like it was calm, which is weird for me to enjoy. It was very calm and just peaceful, but there was a lot of tension in it, which is why they named themselves that. And they made such good music, and it's sad for them not to be around. But they're not even like together as a band anymore. But that was mine.
So the band that I actually chose, and this could really, really throw you for a loop and maybe make you laugh. Simple Plan.
Interesting. Okay.
Like, where are they? Remember how big they used to be?
Yeah, they were a lot. Interesting.
I mean, part of me was thinking about changing my answer to the band Fun, but
Oh my gosh, they were on my second answer as well. Like if I had another
the
one.
thing is, we know what happened to Fun. They,
Yeah.
I think, at this point in time, are gone. They're gone. They're done. And it's a shame because they had that really good album. You know, that album, Some Nights, is amazing.
It's so good.
There's nothing else that sounded like that album at the time.
His voice was so unique, you know.
Yeah, and
So,
it's sad. But you want to know something? One of the few things that we never actually discussed, but I'll be glad to discuss it with you now. There was a time in music where, and it actually will flow into this next category, but there was a time when like artists were not necessarily in the music scene for long periods of time. Now, that could be either because of the fact that they just left or because unfortunate tragedies happened. Like Jimi Hendrix was making music for 4 years, and even though he passed away, those 4 years are legendary.
Absolutely. And that's the 27 Club. You know, there's so many artists that pass away, you know, due to overdose or, you know, mental illness, things like that impact their life. And it's so unfortunate. We lost so many in the past 10 years too. Like it's a shame. But also, like, I feel like it's always been this way where there's, you know, people that, you know, break out with certain songs, and then there's a couple of names that stick around. And I think now with the trend of these, you know, video dance challenges and like TikTok and Vine and all these things that they make memes out of certain songs, it's kind of reinforcing it some, but then there are a lot of artists that are sticking around more than they used to.
And the thing is, I feel that, you know, when you take a look at certain bands that have literally been performing for like the last 50, even 60 years, it's like, well, when's enough? You know, it's like, I feel that it's not that to me, that's not what rock and roll at least used to be. There used to be a small period of time, like the artist would be around for 10, maybe even 20 years. Like the Beatles were a band for 10 years, and look at what they did to music. 10 years!
Yeah, they made like maybe 100, was it 150 songs? I can't remember. I don't know. They didn't
make 10 years.
Yeah, and like they made a lot of music. A lot of it, they just went to the, you know, the studio and they made a whole album in one day. But like they also, their songs were shorter, and now we have a lot longer songs. There's a lot more people on the songs, you know, and so it's interesting.
And the same could be said about Led Zeppelin. They pretty much were just making music until John Bonham passed away, unfortunately.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's just like the preservation factor is just gone. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, the Rolling Stones are legends, but I swear to God, how the hell are they still doing it?
I totally understand that, and it's a shame because, you know, some artists, you know, Amy Winehouse, for example, she was only around for a little while, you know, in the music scene, but her music is still, you know, so good and so iconic. And then you kind of wonder, is it, you know, with some of these artists, is it because they passed away that we, you know, appreciate their music more, or would we still have if they were still, you know, in the game? And that's a sad thing to think about, but that's, you know, the way people work. So
I mean, come on, if there's one conversation that I constantly have with people on this topic, it's like, what would Nirvana be if Kurt Cobain never passed away? Like, would they be what they were, or would they be something completely different now? And I mean, like, Kurt
Yeah.
Cobain, I mean, was just 3 albums. You
Yeah.
know, I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, 4 if you count Incesticide, but
Yeah.
you know,
But let's
that's
not.
yeah. I mean, but the point that I'm making is like 3 albums, and
Yeah.
that's it.
And the impact of those 3 albums is amazing. And weird thing to mention, but Nicki Minaj, before she even had her own album, her name was everywhere because
Yeah,
she had features on so many songs, and that was an interesting, breakout, as for her as an artist, being just on other songs so
yeah,
often
exactly,
before she even
exactly.
had her own.
I mean, it gets to the point when you're listening to some of these bands, and it's just like their music is just not what you think they are. Like,
Hmm.
I'll give you 2 examples, but for some strange reason, they always manage. Like, after an album that I really don't like, I'm like saying to myself, "Is this the end?" And then their next album, oh my god, I like them again. Like Megadeth,
Hmm.
Weezer.
Yeah.
I mean, I can say that the last album that they made, I didn't like at all. I liked their
Yeah.
cover album, and but I liked the album that they made the year before that. But remember when Weezer like couldn't make music, and then all of a sudden in 2001, there they are again, and now they just can't stop making music?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, who was it recently? Kesha. She completely changed, because getting out from under a terrible working environment, and then having complete freedom with her music, completely different. But now I don't know where she is currently, but her last music that she recently released was so great because it had that freedom factor with it.
Mhm. So, in regards to this conversation, who do you think is the band that needs to throw in the towel?
So mine's an artist, and personally, Selena Gomez.
Really?
I just I can't, because she's not the one like making the music, in my opinion. Like the most recent song, "Look at Me Now," the
Hmm.
chorus is just, it's not even humming. Like, I don't. It's the sound you make when you eat something that's really good. Like, and it's in those kind of instances, she's not really a singer. She's just there to dance and be a figurehead for the song, honestly. And that's like a frustration for me because there are so many talented musicians and singers out there, and she's called a singer, and she's not. She's more of a just like the figurehead for this music. And personally, that's just frustrating. I love Selena Gomez as a person. She's interesting, she's neat. I have no issue with her, but like music wise, I just have a hard time respecting her as like an artist because she's really just a performer.
Well, one of the things is like I could mention the Rolling Stones, but I'm not going to. But they're also, what's really sad is not necessarily the fact that we lost artists, like they're no longer with us, but
Hmm.
in the last 2 years, 3 iconic names in music retired.
Yeah.
You know, Elton John,
Hmm.
Rush, and REM. They're
Yeah.
not making any more music anymore. And I'm so angry because I've never been to any of their concerts. And now I'll never get
Hmm.
that chance. I would have loved to have seen REM in concert just to see
Absolutely.
this amazing music. But I think if there's any band that I really like that really needs to throw in the towel right now, it's Aerosmith, because
Ah, yeah.
they haven't given me anything new that I truly love. I mean, don't get me wrong, to be coming into the mainstream in the 1970s, practically falling apart in the 80s, coming back in the 90s and getting your first #1 single thanks to the Armageddon soundtrack with I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, and
Hmm.
even giving us a great album with Just Push Play. It's just like they haven't really been giving us anything new and great like they used
Hmm.
to. And
Absolutely.
as much as I love Steven Tyler, I love Steven Tyler, I love Joe Perry, I
Hmm.
love this band. I mean, I just feel that if they retired, it wouldn't be bad because again, it's
Yeah.
like I'm saying, it's like they're just weighing out their welcome. You know, Madonna's
Yeah.
doing the exact same thing. When was the
Oh,
last time she
Madonna.
gave us a truly great single?
She needs to stop. She needs to stop. Yeah, but no, it's kind of like that. The Batman. You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
And
It's the
that's
same
one of
thing
the
for
things that I
artists.
don't want. And I
Uh-uh.
don't like it when I feel that way. I mean, don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. I will always love Aerosmith. There's so
Yeah.
many good songs for me to despise them, but
Yeah.
As far as new music, I'm just not really getting their vibe. I'm not.
Yeah, it's like Maroon 5. If they had stopped, I'd be good,
Yeah,
but no.
yeah, exactly. So the next one is the disaster of an artist, like the one that was just, really in a messed up place, and it could be a whole number of factors, and the music that they were giving us was just something that you really didn't care for.
Yeah. I gotta say Kanye.
Okay.
I like a couple
I
of songs,
you
but
see, you see, if I may interrupt you, and I'm really sorry about
no,
that,
you're
but you
good.
see, to me, Kanye is not about the music.
Uh,
Kanye really should just go and make a podcast. You
yeah.
know,
He just wants to talk.
he just wants to talk, and it's like what Howard Stern was in the 1980s.
Yeah.
The people who loved him and the people who hated him kept listening because they wanted to hear what he would say next. That's
Yeah.
exactly what people do that with. There's two people in this country right now that people do that for. One is Kanye and the other one is Donald Trump. That's
Yep.
what people do. They
They're
just
just
want
curious.
to hear. They just want to hear.
What's gonna happen next? Yeah, no. With
Exactly.
him, I feel like he says things just for reactions a lot of times, and just to try and stay relevant. Like, there's a couple of good songs that I like of Kanye's, but for the most part, it's because of the other people on the tracks. The only song that I really can say, like, I really really liked that one is like Love Lockdown, and but the thing that I liked about it was the drums and like that kind of aspect of it. It's never like him that I like about the music that he has, but he's all over the place. And socially he's all over the place, and he's just a
Yeah,
mess.
well, now that you basically told me a little something earlier, now I feel a little bit guilty about who I chose because I picked Kesha.
Really
Because
interesting.
it's just because of the fact that it was like she came out right around the
Hmm.
time that we got Lady Gaga,
Yeah,
and I
and
was
it was
like, to
around the
me,
same.
I thought she was just a plain old ripoff.
Yeah,
I didn't like any of her songs. I thought that she was just I especially when I heard her first single TikTok,
yeah,
brush my teeth with a bottle of Jack. I'm like, how immature can you possibly get? I thought that
absolutely.
I hate to say it, I thought she was a joke. I still, to a
I did
certain degree,
too.
believe she's a joke. But
I
I
did too.
didn't know about her work environment. I didn't.
Yeah, she was. So I was the same way. I didn't like any of her older music. I said maybe this is like fun for dancing and stuff. But I found out, after hearing all the stories about her work environment, her like I guess it was her producer maybe. He was not letting her create the music she wanted. He was making her have a specific image. He was also, consistently, assaulting her. And so she finally, she couldn't get, rights for her own music because of the situation. Either her label wouldn't let her work with somebody else. They consistently forced her to work with him, or she couldn't make music at all. And so recently she was able to get out from under that, and she did make, I don't know if it was a whole album, but the song "Praying" by her, I think it's called "Praying," was such a good song, and it was her style, and she had that freedom with it, and it was more of her actual voice. And she does have a really good voice, but before that, hated everything, hated
Yeah,
all
and
of
I
that.
guess
Yeah,
the reason why is because it took her 10 years to basically get to this point. So look,
yeah,
I'm just hoping that the next 10 years will do good things for her. But
absolutely.
if I'm going to really encapsulate 2011, 2010 to 2019, I cannot,
That's fair.
she sort of has to be here,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, and I
So,
really hope that she's able to show more of herself in the next decade.
okay, so we're heading into the last two categories, and this is where we're going to be thinking about the next 10 years.
Okay.
So, who do you think is the best new artist or new band in music today? Like, who is going to bring us into 2020 and become a major staple in the next 10 years? I actually now have two.
I I also have two.
Okay.
But my first one's Lizzo,
That's
because
mine. That's one of mine.
good.
So we
Okay.
have a match.
Yes, we have a match, because Lizzo is just so fun and so confident and just so refreshing, and like it's hip hop, but it's pop, and then it's just fun.
Can I say something? Because
Go
I've
for it.
actually heard her non-hip hop talent. I think
Mhm.
she's the second coming of Aretha.
Yes, okay. I can go with
I
that.
hear, I think, I think the we will. I think that if she decides to go a little bit more into the soul sound, she will be called the Princess of Soul.
She will be unstoppable.
She will be the next Aretha Franklin. I feel it. I feel that this woman has something truly special. And even though I understand that hip hop is a major staple in popular culture and in music right now, I really hope that she uses this other talented part of her music range.
I hope she doesn't leave. Yeah, I hope she doesn't leave the hip hop altogether, but I do hope she incorporates that, because her music is really just for these people that want to feel, you know, good about themselves and feel confident and feel, it's just so unapologetic. Like, I've used that word already today, but like it really is. It's so fun. And she seems like such a just down to earth person too. You know, like that one song, Truth Hurts, she got the beginning of it from a tweet. She found the person that made the tweet and gave them royalties, like gave them a songwriting credit, which is fun because they were actually a songwriter. You know, it's really cool.
And you also said you had two, so who was your second one? If we actually match on both, I will be shocked.
I feel like we won't, but who knows? Who knows? My other one is controversial, I guess, but Billie Eilish.
That was also my other one.
That's so funny, because I mean, there are a lot of it's very divisive. Her music is very divisive. You know, people either hate her or love her. I typically like really strong vocalists. I like ones that are really out there. Her voice is so like, it sounds so quiet and sensitive and vulnerable though. It's a very interesting sound.
I say Bjorkish.
Yeah, and
I hear Bjork when I listen to her.
Yes, which was such a unique artist too. And I feel like at her age, she's only going to get better, you know. And she's
and the reason why is because there is nobody else that sounds like her.
No, it's so
you know, it's like Adele pretty much was that one of a kind voice of the last 10 years. I think that is Billie Eilish for the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
I still don't know if I'm going to get any of her albums. I mean, like, I'm not really the biggest fan of Bad Guy, but that chorus is just getting me. But there's that other song of hers, Bury a Friend. That's the one that got me. That song is so, there's like a creep factor to it.
Absolutely. I can't, the music videos and lyric videos that were made for that song too are just so interesting. And there's my other favorite song by her is My Strange Addiction. It has a lot of samples from The Office in it, and which is really weird and interesting. But I think that she's going to be an interesting person to keep an eye on, because I think she's going to keep making interesting music.
Okay,
and I love that. I love
the fact that we actually matched on both, because I matched when I was doing my movie episode. We had a match, but the fact that you and I had the same two in the same category, now that's very interesting. But but it would be even more interesting if we matched in the last question, which is the most anticipated comeback. The band that you know there's a comeback on the horizon. It's just a matter of when it gets here. And for me, there is this one specific band in the world of, I don't even know if they are hard rock or alt rock or metal. I don't know, but I'll just do mine first. The most anticipated comeback of the next 10 years is System of a Down.
I didn't know they were coming back.
There is all of this speculation and these rumors about them going back into the studio, coming together with a new album. People know there's a new album from these guys somewhere, somehow. It's gonna happen, and everybody is like begging for them to come back, because you want to talk about a unique sound in metal. You don't get more unique than songs like Chop Suey or Sugar or The Question or BYOB. They're one of the most weirdest, but most they have a song, I think it's Mesmerized, called Radio Video. And there's a part of the intro, like in the middle of the song when they get to the chorus, it sounds like you're at a fucked up bar mitzvah. It's amazing.
I love that.
It's amazing. I love their music. It's like, well, I still remember I was in college and I heard Sugar for the first time, and I'm like, what the fuck am I listening to? This is weird, but I love it. And you're right, when Chop Suey came out, they went through the frickin' roof. Toxicity
Yeah.
is still one of the best albums in all of hard rock and heavy metal. There's a comeback somewhere. They're always talking about it. We just don't know when it's coming, but I hope it's in the next 10 years.
Absolutely. No, they do have a very unique sound. I didn't know that they were coming back. That's
Yeah,
really...
there's always rumors, and
Yeah.
I mean, like, they're not saying if it's official or not, but there's always something
It's in
talking about
there.
them going back into the studio.
Absolutely. I think that's interesting. Okay. So yeah, mine is one that a lot of people are freaking out about, but My Chemical Romance.
Of course,
You
of
know,
course.
it's they had my heart in high school. I was just today in the car, I was just singing that whole Black Parade, you know, Helena, you know, all the great songs, you know. So
Mhm.
they're my faves, you know.
Yeah, well, you want to know something? If My Chemical Romance can make a comeback in the coming decade, then I'm pretty certain that System of a Down's comeback is going to happen. And I think that even though I'm not a fan of My Chemical Romance, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be everything that the fans of that band want. And that means, I'm telling you, System of a Down is going to come back, and they're going to give us something just as crazy, but just as
Yeah.
special. I can feel it. I really can.
It's always scary when they come back and you're like, are they going to be the same? Are they going to be too different? What are they going to do?
Exactly. But anyway, everybody, that wraps up the best and worst in music in the last decade. And I got to say, that was a great conversation, Cate.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming and joining in the fun with me. And I really hope that the two of us can collab on some kind of a project in the next year as well. That would be great to talk to you again.
Absolutely. I'd love to. Thank you for having me.
Hi. Oh, you're very welcome. And I'm also looking forward to seeing you at BookCon 2020.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, because I missed my opportunity the last time. I was really upset. But I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. So everybody, thank you very much for watching. And I will see you guys for the next episode, which will actually be the last of these 4. And I'm really excited for that one because it's going to be encompassing pretty much everything that we haven't talked about up until this point. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. If you're new here and want to see more of what my channel has to offer, please click on the link to my last video or hit that subscribe button to be kept up to date with all of my uploads. Content of all sorts is posted here quite often, so trust me, you do not want to fall behind. I will see you in the comments, and actions speak louder than words.